It has been nearly 7 years since the last single-player Fallout game was released. Even closer, Fallout 76 was released in 2018 and is consistently being updated year after year. This brings us to today, with Fallout 5 being a major talking point when it comes to Bethesda games. What will it be like? Will we see a big difference between Fallout 4 to 5, and so much more? And what is up guys, Andrew from the Den Men here, and today we will be going over everything we could be seeing in Fallout 5. Now this video is highly speculative, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but if you are excited, make sure you hit that like button and comment what you want to see from Fallout 5. With that being said though, we have a lot to go over today, so get comfy, relax a little, and let's get right into the video. First, let's just say this now, Fallout 5 will not be released for a long time. Starfield is Bethesda's next game and we haven't even gotten that yet. On top of that, it is already confirmed that Elder Scrolls 6 will be coming after that, so we are for sure going to be waiting a good amount of time. Let's not forget that it usually takes Bethesda 3 to 4 years to complete their big games, so we are looking like we will be waiting a lot closer to 2030. Now that we got through with that, let's take a look at a couple of different things that we could be seeing for Fallout 5. A big part of every Bethesda game is location. The setting of the game sets the story for everything that follows, including quests, characters, and even themes. If we take a look at Fallout 4, the Boston area was a really unique one, with a lot of different regions throughout the game. They were also able to level it really well too by making it harder the further south you travel. Bethesda was able to combine the rural and more tame environments like the area surrounding Sanctuary and make it the starting area, while the center of Boston would be a much harder zone. The same can be said with a region like the Glowing Sea. It is easy to see why it would be an endgame location with it having the largest radiation field in the game. I would like them to follow this trend in Fallout 5 by synergizing the leveling with how crazy an environment looks. What would be a good place to do this though? None other than the Big Apple or New York City. For those who don't know, New York City was a potential location for Fallout 4, but they decided to go with Boston because there was a lack of technology for the ambitious plans for a game set in that area. Well, they definitely would not be running into a technology problem anymore, so New York City would be a slam dunk in my opinion. We haven't heard much about the region of New York in the Fallout game, so there is a lot of potential here to go in a lot of different ways. One thing I will say though, is that a lot of the city would most likely be rubble, because it would no doubt have been hit during the Great War. There are a lot of positives and negatives here because on one hand, people might think that if it's all rubble, then there would be nothing in New York City itself. This is most likely very far off from being true. Take a look at the city of Boston, and even though we did have a highly irradiated area of the Glowing Sea, there were still a lot of structures still standing. It would likely be similar to that, but more dense and way more design put into it. Just think of the amount of detail that could be put into a game set in New York City. We could see people settling in fallen skyscrapers, raiders hiding in the rubble awaiting their victims, and potentially verticality taking on a bigger role. The idea of having more verticality in a game like Fallout is an interesting idea and one that I think would fit quite well. I can really see us having to fight through a lot of the skyscrapers and possibly even being able to jump from rooftop to rooftop in some circumstances. Obviously, Bethesda would take this idea of verticality and make it a lot more in depth, but we will just have to wait and see on that end. A good way for Bethesda to really lean into the location of New York City is to have both high skyscrapers, but also deep subway tunnels. There is a lot of potential with this because there is so much to the city that you can't even see when above ground. I would really like to see a maze-like environment for the subway area because it would certainly hold many secrets. A game set in New York City would need to be in depth. There's so much potential here, and I hope Bethesda really leans into making this one of the best we have ever seen. So we have the where, but now we need the when. Well, to take a look at every Fallout game up to date, they've released with a small time jump in between the titles. I would like to see this continue, but this time only about 2 to 3 years from Fallout 4. I'm assuming that Bethesda will go the route of a player taking down the Institute instead of them joining up with them, and I think this would create an interesting dynamic for the next game. With a time jump of 2 to 3 years, there wouldn't be enough time to forget about what the Institute was, but also there would be enough time for some of the factions in Fallout 4 to be more established. The idea of little conversations from people talking about the boogeyman of the Commonwealth and still afraid of whether they are synths would definitely be an interesting idea. I wouldn't want it to be the main focus of the game in Fallout 5, but we could definitely see a few quests and some dialogue options that speak about the Institute and synths. New York City isn't that far off from the Commonwealth, so with a 2-year time jump, word would definitely spread about what transpired there. Another interesting topic is how relevant Fallout 76 would be to Fallout 5. Even though they will likely take place nearly 200 years apart, I bet they would be more closely related than one might think. By the time Fallout 5 is actually released, 76 would be over 10 years old, and it looks like as of right now that they will not stop updating the multiplayer title. This means we would see a number of pit-like expansions being added to Fallout 76. Wherever that might take the player, we will just have to wait and see. But I doubt that Bethesda won't even mention 76 within Fallout 5 with how much time and resources have been put into the game. Whether that be a character from 76, dialogue hinting at what transpired during the game, or even any of the creatures we might encounter, either way, expect to see it in some way, shape, or form in Fallout 5. Factions play a big role in any of Bethesda's games. There are some noteworthy ones that make it into all of their titles like the Dark Brotherhood and even the Brotherhood of Steel, but there are also those that people come to enjoy through one-off experiences like the Railroad. Fallout in particular has given us some of the best factions and are always a major part of the main story for the game. The 5th installment in the series has a chance to do it again and give us some really unique groups. One in particular that I think has a lot of potential are the Raiders in the game. I'm sticking with the idea that Fallout 5 will be set in New York City, and with that being said, there's a lot that Bethesda can actually do with the factions of Raiders. I want to look back for a second at the Nuka World DLC, because that is a good example of this group being done correctly. There are 3 main Raider factions in Nuka World, with the Pack, Operators, and Disciples. Each of them had a backstory and are a little different from one another, just enough where they could be infighting and sticking to their Raider way. At the end of the story for Nuka World, one faction would rebel and try to take the power plant from the player. Of course, we stop whichever Raider gang it was and restore power to the park. Well, if you remember correctly, Nuka World was supposed to be the beginning for these Raiders, with both of them expanding into the Commonwealth. If Fallout 5 does have a small time jump, we could possibly see these Raiders in New York City. This would be a great way to connect the 2 games and bring a faction back that we all know. If they were to do this, Raiders would no doubt have a greater role, and it is actually quite logical in my opinion. The Commonwealth and New York City aren't that far off from one another, so it would make sense that the Nuka World Raiders would try to expand to here. New York City would likely have plenty of valuables for this Raider gang, so it is definitely a possibility that we see them. We would still see a lot of other Raiders that aren't tied to those from Nuka World, but I hope they would be some of the main ones we would interact with. Another faction that I would be interested in seeing is the Brotherhood of Steel. They have been a main focus of the recent titles and are pretty well known, so I doubt they will be left out of Fallout 5 entirely. How much we will see them is still up for debate. Personally, I'd like to move on from the Brotherhood of Steel and create some new unique factions for Fallout 5. Vaults are a big part of every Fallout title, and a game set in New York City would be no different. Being the most populated city in America, there would no doubt be a number of vaults scattered throughout the city. We would likely see the most amount of vaults compared to any other game, so they will vary greatly from how they are designed. We might see some like Vault 81 where they are thriving, and then we would definitely see some abandoned ones as well. There is so much potential when it comes to vaults because of how they are designed, and a game set in New York City might have the best ones yet. One more faction that I think has a lot of potential for being in the next game are actually synths. We saw from the Far Harbor DLC that they are located in more than just the Commonwealth, and even though I don't want them to be a major part of the story for Fallout 5, there's a good chance we see them again. I think it would be great if we got to see one questline where we are helping a synth on the run or having to face off against a courser. Even though the Institute would likely be destroyed in the next game, there is still some potential for synths being a faction in future titles. A big topic when it comes to any Bethesda game is the idea of settlement or outpost building. We first got this in Fallout 4, and it has increasingly been a big part of all future games, starting with 76 and now Starfield. Bethesda is really set on having outpost building in their games, and I doubt it will be going away by the time Fallout 5 rolls around. I think that they are moving in the right direction with this feature though, just from what we saw from the Starfield gameplay reveal. A little good quality of life improvements include a bird's eye view of the property, it can function on its own, and be able to hire your own crew to work it. All of these little changes make it just a little better, but we will just have to wait and see until Starfield actually releases. Fallout 5 on the other hand might take a different approach with its outpost building because it's not as futuristic and a lot less civilized. I would also believe that it will be an optional feature unlike the one from Fallout 4. Either way, they will keep expanding on this gameplay feature, and bring it into the world of Fallout 5 is almost certain. Fallout 5 has some major potential from its location, time period, and even its factions. New York City has some unique gameplay opportunities, and I hope they will really lean into designing the best possible environment here. Don't expect to see Fallout 5 anytime soon, but when we finally get to see something on this game, get ready for a crazy adventure back into the wasteland. But that is all for me now though, guys. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Comment any videos you want to see in the future, and I'll see you all next time.